So I'm going to show you how to do this little mini-me composition. So what I have here, let me zoom in just a little bit. What I have here is a little painter, and he's going through and he's whitening the teeth. So I've done a couple of things. I have layered my painter in. I've done an adjustment layer in here for levels to make these teeth brighter. And I used a specialty brush so it looks like paint. I have made a copy of my painter, and that's my layer 2 here. I have flipped it upside down and I've changed the opacity down to about 22%, and then I blurred it just a little bit so that it looks like a reflection. So that's the part that I'm going to walk you through of just how I did all of these things. So let's take this all the way back up to just my picture of the dentures. So I have this macro shot and I want to put in this realistic image. So I've already selected him and I've done the refine and mask, so I got a cleaner edge, it's feathered. It's not the most perfect, but it'll work for what we're doing here. So I'm going to copy him out and place him inside. And he's going to be a little bit too large, so I'm just going to go ahead and transform, edit transform, and shrink him down and imagine where he would be standing, how close he would be standing to the teeth or the wall if he was going to paint on it. So that looks about good to me. All right, the next thing I want to do is I want to go in and I want to have an adjustment made for just these teeth so that it seems brighter. So I don't want to do it on top of layer 1 because this is going to be my painter. So let's label these so you can see that. So I'm going to click down here to the background, and then I'm going to add my adjustment layer. And I'm going to go into levels, and I want the teeth to be brighter. So I'm going to go ahead and brighten those up so they feel a little whiter. But now it's the entire picture. So you can see it's the entire picture, and I want it just for the teeth. So I want to be able to mask out just the teeth. Remember, this white square is a mask, so I'm just going to invert the mask with a Control or Command I so that you don't see any part of it. And now I'm going to go through with my brush tool. My mask is now black, so I can paint with white, and I can go through and I can just brighten up these teeth. So I would go through and I would brighten up each of these teeth, and I'm not going to do the entire thing just yet. So you can see I have different levels of brightness on here already. You can tell my opacity is not at 100% because it has a soft edge here. And I can even take this down a little bit more. It's like 18% if I really want to have a nice soft edge through here to blend in the teeth into the gums. Okay, so that looks great. So now I'm going to boost my opacity back a lot stronger, and I'm going to go in here to my brushes, and I'm going to find a painterly brush like this one. You can always add brushes in if you need to do that. And this brush is too big, so let's shrink that down. There we go. And this is behind the painter layer, so I don't need to worry about this. I can just go right on top of where he is because actually it's on the layer underneath him, so it's not going to affect him in any way. And I'm going to get, there we go, some brush strokes in there, so it looks like he's halfway through painting this tooth. Now I don't like that rough edge, so I'm going to go back to the brush I had before. And again, I'm going to take this down about halfway so that I can gently put in the levels that I want and get it to the opacity so that it seems natural and I can blend away as I go. Once I get that started, I can go ahead and boost that a little bit more. And now it looks like he is brightening the teeth. So if I zoom out, the more that I make all of these teeth brighter, the better that's going to have the effect that I'm looking for. So I can go through here, I could touch up these teeth, and in general, they are going to feel like he has just whitened the teeth. Now, if I like this, but I want them to feel even brighter and a little less yellowy, let me show you how you can add in more than one mask without actually having to paint through all of this. So I like those, but they still kind of feel yellow. I want that to be a nice pop. So what I'm going to do is go to this mask. I'm going to right click on the mask. I'm going to say Add Mask to Selection. I can now go back to my adjustments and I can pick a different adjustments like this hue saturation. And I can pull down the saturation, and that will take out some of the yellow. So you can see the yellow in these teeth. And I'm going to take that down so they just feel a little brighter. And then I'm going to go ahead and whiten those up by lightening them just a little bit. So it feels like he's truly whitening the teeth. So I have these two adjustment layers just by copying the mask. All right, now let's go to our painter. We need his reflection, so it seems like he's actually on the ground and in this scene. So I've already selected him. Remember, he is just floating by himself in this layer. So I can go to this layer and click on the magic wand tool and click anywhere in the background because the background is empty. And now I'm going to go in here and say select, and I'm going to go to select inverse, and now it's just my painter. And I'm going to go ahead, and I could have also just done a Command J to copy that layer, but I'm going to do a Command C and a Command V to copy this layer right out. And there he is. Oops, I did too. There. He is in there. I just need to move him. No, he is not. All right. Well, there he is. Okay. So I have a second painter. Let's go ahead under Edit and let's do a transform and let's flip him vertically. Now, if you needed to create a shadow, this is a great way to do a shadow as well. I could change the perspective if I needed to go on an angle. But for this one, I'm just going to flip him vertically so he looks like a shadow or reflection. And then I'm going to go in here and just change down the opacity until it gets to be about the grayness of the teeth. And I can kind of play with this and see what I like. That looks great to me. Now, it's still a little sharp because he's completely in focus, and reflections and shadows always have a slight blur to them. So I'm going to go up here under Filter and Blur, and I'm going to do a Gaussian blur. And I want ever so slightly of a blur, so I'm just going to 0.7. I'm not going to do a huge blur, otherwise it's going to completely disappear. So I'm going to click OK to that. And now I have my little painter whitening the teeth, which looks like a reflection. So I want to stop right here, but I want to add in one more little piece in case you want this to be a shadow. If you are doing a shadow, it is the same effect, except you are going to fill this shape with a gray. So let's do that really quickly. I'm going to take off my painter. I'm going to go back to this painter. Remember, I did the magic wand tool to select the outside. I did a select inverse, so I have just the painter. But now I'm going to add a new layer, this new empty layer, and I'm going to call this layer Shadow. All right, now in my shadow layer, I have this little man selected. I'm going to go to Edit, Fill, and fill him with 50% gray. Now I would go through that same process, or I go into Edit, and I'm going to transform. I'm going to flip him vertical. And so now my shadow is a vertical upside down shadow. And I can attach it to his feet. Now in this case, I want to move my shadow underneath my painter. There we go. And again, I can change how the shadow blends with this surface. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Edit, I'm going to do Transform, and I am going to either do a skew or a perspective. Both of them will work great. Whoops, wrong layer. There we go. Edit, Transform, let's do a skew. Now with the skew, I can simply pull this off to the side and get the exact angle that I want. In perspective, both sides will go at the same time. So you can decide, do you want to move those independently? Do you want to move that together? And I can make this shadow do whatever I want it to do. So I kind of like the skew, and I can stretch it out so it's a long shadow, whatever the direction I feel like it is. All right, now it still doesn't look quite like a shadow. Oh, I lost his head a little bit in there. It's okay. We are going to change this to a different mode. So depending on how dark or light you need that shadow to be, I kind of like multiply. I can always lower the opacity over here to get my shadow. And then again, remember, a shadow is usually a little softer. So I want to go to that filter. I want to go to a blur and go to the Gaussian blur. And I can decide how much I need that shadow to blur. Something like that. And then, depending on what your scene is, you have your person, they are attached to the ground, their exact shape becomes the shadow, and it looks a lot more realistic and they're a lot more grounded. If you need this shadow to fade away, you can always click on the mask button, have that like here, go into your gradient tool, and make the shadow fade. Oops, wrong way. There we go. And just have the edge of that shadow